WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar and Abidjan, 1 o'clock in Abuja. Good afternoon, and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. Borno State Governor appeals to the federal government to deploy decisive strategies to tackle rising insecurity in Maiduguri and Lake Chad communities.
Because the insurgency may affect me direct or indirectly, because it may cause future conflict that will ring almost all the states.
It really struck us down hearing this information. We really felt bad about it.
Ivory Coast to fund 2025 presidential election without foreign aid. 55 billion CFA set aside amid rising opposition concern. Amnesty International condemns life sentence for Cameroonian peace advocate Abdul Karim Ali, and Niger to repatriate over 4,000 migrants expelled from Algeria and Libya. Details of these stories and more coming up shortly.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
We start the bulletin in Nigeria, specifically in Maiduguri, the Borno State capital, and several local government areas where residents are in panic mode over the resurgence of violent extremism in the region. Fighters from the Boko Haram terrorist organization and its offshoot ISWAP have been blamed for the recent attacks targeting farming and fishing communities. In the last 2 weeks, nearly 100 people, including farmers and fishermen in the Lake Chad Basin, were killed by insurgents. State Governor Professor Baba Gana Umaru Zulum, who is on an assessment tour to affected localities, has appealed to the federal government to deploy decisive strategies to tackle the rising insurgency. Abdullah Hassan reports from Maiduguri.
Recently, we've done so much about the security, and we've discussed with the president and the security service chiefs, and they've assured us to work day and night to ensure security of people.
Professor Babagana Zulum addressing state residents over the weekend after a series of attacks last Thursday by insurgents that left over 53 people dead in Marte local government area. The victims, mostly farmers and fishermen, were among thousands of displaced persons relocated by state authorities back to their ancestral homes under the Reconstruction, Rehabilitation and Resettlement Program. They spent nearly 10 years in camps until their resettlement 4 years ago. In Maiduguri, WADR met Professor Ibrahim Umara, an international relations expert who gave reasons for the resurgence of violent extremism in the state.
When the federal government wanted to fight these bandits in northwestern Nigeria, the issues of insurgency have subsided in Maiduguri, and therefore they redeploy the command and control as well as the manpower on the ground with some weapons to red zone in the southwestern part of the country, leaving the few troops on ground without adequate platoon cover. And then tap, and the most important of it was, most of these insurgents are surrendering. The other insurgents who don't want to surrender sabotage those that are surrendering. The best way is for them to attack military formations and formalities so that nobody will trust the reason why they are surrendered.
Youth in Borno who were children at the onset of the Boko Haram crisis 15 years ago are alarmed.
Because the insurgency may affect me direct or indirectly, because it may cause future conflict that will ring almost all the states.
It really struck us down hearing this information. We really felt bad about it.
Across several local government areas of Borno, villagers have evacuated their homes in recent days as insurgents intensify attacks against communities and military formations using IEDs, landmines and ambush techniques. The governor, however, reiterated his commitment to supporting security agencies in attaining lasting peace in the state.
Abdullah Hassan reporting there. Still in Nigeria, the northern part of the country is once again in mourning following a string of deadly attacks that claimed the lives of at least 50 people over the weekend. The assaults, which occurred across the states of Katsina, Kebbi and Benue, have intensified calls for stronger security measures in the region. In Katsina State, local sources reported that armed men on motorcycles stormed the village of Gobiwara on Saturday night, opening fire on civilians. At least 20 people were killed in the attack, with 15 shops and 20 homes reportedly destroyed, according to Abdurrahman Abdullahi, head of the state's civil society coalition. In Kebbi State, 15 farmers were killed in broad daylight while walking on their fields in the village of Wadr. Meanwhile, in Benue State, another 15 people, most of them shopkeepers, lost their lives in a coordinated attacks on several rural communities. Although no group has claimed responsibility, the assaults bear the hallmark of a so-called bandits armed criminal gangs that have been operating in the northern Nigeria since 2020. These groups are frequently involved in violent raids, kidnappings and theft, often targeting remote villages with little or no security presence. Public pressure on the government is growing. In response to the escalating violence, President Bola Tinubu over the weekend ordered the Nigerian armed forces to intensify their operations and confront the mounting security challenges threatening national stability. As the affected communities bury their dead, the demand for action is growing louder, particularly in northern Nigeria, where residents say they have long been left vulnerable to attacks. In Côte d'Ivoire, the Electoral Commission has recently declined financial support from the European Union for upcoming elections. The decision sparked questions given the EU's long-standing role in supporting Ivorian polls. The Ivorian government has announced it will fully finance the October 2025 presidential elections without external donor support, a major shift from previous elections which heavily relied on international partners like the European Union. Over 55 billion CFA francs, about 0.4% of the national budget, will be allocated to cover all related expenses, including voter registration revisions and the purchase of voting materials. Christopher Aticho has the details in this report.
According to the authorities, this will begin the presidential elections scheduled for next October. The Ivorian government has indicated that over 55 billion CFA francs will be disbursed for the organization of the presidential election. These funds will be taken from the national budget and will represent only 0.4% of the state budget for 2025. According to government spokesperson Amadou Coulibaly, this envelope will cover all expenses associated with the organization of the election. Nearly half of the funds should be devoted to revising the electoral register and another significant portion to purchasing voting materials. Unlike the three previous presidential elections, this year Abidjan says it intends to go ahead without external support or assistance. According to observers, the same will certainly be true for other elections, including the legislative one scheduled for 2026. A choice that marks a break with decades of donor support for the organization of elections, said Deputy Government Spokesperson. The opposition denounced this as a maneuver on the part of the state to avoid the scrutiny of international partners. However, the government did not specify whether international observers, notably from Europe, would be authorized to observe the elections in the country.
A report by Abidjan correspondent Marcel Ariston Blay, voiced by Christopher Aticho.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
To matters relating to health, the National Public Health Institute of Liberia has confirmed 4 active cases of Mpox virus. This announcement was made during a press conference held in Monrovia on Sunday. Among those affected is a prominent Liberian celebrity who is currently undergoing treatment at a designated health facility. WDR's correspondent Abraham Parker reports.
According to Dr. Dokpa Chris Yin, the Director General of National Public Health Institute of Liberia, NPHIL, the confirmed cases include 2 in Montserrado, 1 in Sino County, and another in Magibi County. Dr. Yin noted that Liberia has recorded a total of 81 confirmed cases, which includes the 4 active instances.
We confirmed by testing, and that testing is called molecular testing for this kind of disease. So that's what we did. Between now and next week, we'll be receiving more samples. So we'll be testing still. So the number may remain like that. The number may increase. But as of today, we have 4 active cases of Mpox in Liberia. We have 7 recovered cases.
In response to the situation, MPhil has intensified its surveillance efforts and encourages citizens to report any suspected cases within their communities. Dr. Yen also mentioned that vaccines are available to combat the virus, but he appealed to international partners for additional vaccine supplies as Liberia is currently engaged in cross-border activities that support neighboring countries.
So if we are able to handle the situation within this triangle, it will not spiral out of control. We can be vaccinating in Liberia and at the same time in Guinea.
The World Health Organization has expressed confidence in the Liberian government's ability to manage and contain the outbreak effectively. Authorities are urging the public to remain calm and refrain from panic as they address this health challenge. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
Still on Mpox, Ghana's Ministry of Health and Ghana Health Services have announced 2 additional confirmed cases of Mpox in Ghana, one in a Greater Accra region and another in the Western region. This brings the total number of confirmed cases so far to 4 as of Sunday, 18th May 2025. It subsequently urged all citizens to adhere to the safety protocols in order not to be infected. WADR's Nadi Ditete reports.
According to the update, the 2 new cases are not linked to the earlier infections. Health teams in both regions have begun contact tracing and other public health measures to prevent further spread. In a statement signed by Acting Director General of the Ghana Health Service, Professor Samuel Kaba Akorie, the ministry reiterated its commitment to protecting public health, leveraging past experience with infectious diseases to manage the current situation. It urged the populace to adhere to the safety protocols to avoid being infected. Physician, epidemiologist, and public health strategist Dr. Banda A. Khalifa is also making a case for cross-border surveillance.
It's important for us to institute what I call cross-border surveillance, such that if there are any cases that are being imported from other surrounding regions or countries, to be able to detect those cases early. I must add that currently there's an outbreak ongoing in DRC and other neighboring countries, which has caused the WHO to institute a public health emergency of international concern. So it's important that we know what is coming through our land borders so that we'll be able to contain any subsequent importation of cases.
Mpox is a viral disease that spreads through close contact with an infected person, animal, or contaminated materials. Symptoms include rash, fever, headache, muscle aches, fatigue, and swollen lymph nodes. For WADR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
Meanwhile, in Togo, health authorities have launched a public awareness campaign after confirming 2 cases of Mpox, monkeypox, in the Greater Lomé region. The infected individuals are currently receiving treatment in a specialized infectious disease unit. In response, the Ministry of Health is urging the public to adhere strictly to preventive measures to limit the spread of the virus, particularly in the capital Lomé. Residents are advised to regularly wash their hands with soap and clean water, wear a face mask, and cover their mouths and noses when coughing or sneezing. Authorities also warn against close contact with infected individuals, including contact with bodily fluids, skin lesions, or contaminated objects. Transmission can also occur through sexual contact and infected respiratory restrictions. The government has pledged to remain vigilant and is calling for collective responsibility to prevent a major health crisis. Let's turn our attention now to human rights related matters, because Human Rights Watchers Amnesty International has condemned the life sentence handed down to Anglophone peace advocate Abdul Karim Ali by a military court in Cameroon, describing it as a grave miscarriage of justice and blatant violation of international human rights standards. The organization is demanding his immediate and unconditional release. Imo Edet has the details.
Amnesty International has denounced the sentencing of Anglophone peace activist Abdul Karim Ali to life imprisonment as a serious violation of justice and international human rights norms. The judgment, handed down on 16th April by a military court in Yaoundé, convicted him of hostility against the homeland and secession. Abdul Karim Ali was arrested without a warrant in Bamenda in August 2022 after he publicly condemned acts of torture allegedly committed by a pro-government militia leader in the country's restive southwest region. He had been arbitrarily detained for nearly 3 years prior to the trial, including 84 days in military custody under reportedly inhumane conditions. Amnesty International's interim regional director for West and Central Africa, Marcio Silveda, said that Abdul Karim Ali had waited nearly 3 years before being tried by a military court and sentenced to an extreme punishment simply for exercising his rights to freedom of expression. He stated that the judgment was shameful and breached international human rights law and standards. In May 2024, Ali challenged the legitimacy of the military court and refused to participate in proceedings, leading to his trial and sentencing in absentia. His legal counsel has since filed an appeal describing the case as political persecution based on Ali's thoughts, origin, associations, and political stance.
Imo added with that report. You are still listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Borno State Governor appeals to the federal government to deploy decisive strategies to tackle rising insecurity in Maiduguri and Lake Chad communities. Ivory Coast to fund 2025 presidential election without foreign aid, 55 billion CFA set aside amid rising opposition concerns. Amnesty International condemns life sentence for Cameroonian peace advocate Abdul Karim Ali. And Niger to repatriate over 4,000 migrants expelled from Algeria and Libya. Still ahead in the news, we also have guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
The United Nations has raised concerns over Mali's recent decision to dissolve political parties and associations, calling the move draconian and urging the transitional authorities in Bamako to reconsider. The UN also condemned arrests of political actors by the country's intelligence services. Augustine Coley reports.
In a statement, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights called on Mali's transitional authorities to revoke the decree dissolving political parties. The measure has been labeled draconian by UN human rights experts who say it suppresses opposing views. The UN also expressed deep concern over the growing number of arrests targeting critics of the military regime, including political figures carried out by the state security services. It urged the government to release all individuals detained for political reasons and to protect the rights to freedom of expression, association, and peaceful assembly. Following public opposition to the dissolution 2 weeks ago, several political party leaders have reportedly been harassed by state security. Some were reportedly victims of attempted abductions, and one individual remains missing after being arrested at home by gendarmes. While the government claims the dissolution aims to sanitize the political landscape, political actors argue that it constitutes a direct attack on multi-party democracy. It is important to note that under a new law expected to be passed soon, political parties will only be created and regulated according to fresh legal provisions.
Augustine Coley reporting there. Let's remain in Mali. A significant roundtable discussion has recently wrapped up in Bamako, drawing together political leaders, diplomats, scholars under the theme Mali-Algeria crisis. History, realities, and perspectives. Debate to understand to build peace. At a time when the relations between the neighboring nations are strained, this forum serves as a peace space for an open dialogue and deep reflection on the roots and repercussions of the growing crisis. The session was led by Professor Kansani, Mali's Minister of Higher Education, with key participation from other officials like Dr. Amadou Sy, Savane, the Minister of National Education, as well as several foreign diplomats. The catalyst for this diplomatic breakdown, a Malian drone allegedly shot down by Algerian forces within Mali's own airspace, a move that Bamako view as a violation of its sovereignty. This incident has not only heightened tensions but also triggered a wave of support from the islands of Sahel states comprising Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger, signaling the regional stake at play. Minister Kansai addressed the gathering with a strong message, the need to reclaim the narrative. He criticized what he described as a repeated distortion of historic facts from the Algerian side and called for a new, truthful account of regional relations, one that aligns with Mali's national interests while honoring shared heritage. As the event concluded, attendees were encouraged to put forth actionable recommendations, ideas that could guide Mali's foreign policy and help restore trust with Algeria while defending the nation's right to strategic independence. In Niger, the government has announced the upcoming repatriation of migrants from sub-Saharan Africa who were expelled from Algeria and Libya into Niger. This repatriation operation will be carried out in collaboration with the International Organization for Migration, IOM. Nyami says the aim is to prevent a serious humanitarian crisis in Asamaka, a Nigerian town where many of these expelled migrants have ended up. Francis Boniface reports.
In total, more than 4,000 migrants will be returned to their countries of origin through a joint effort between Niger and the International Organization for Migration. The operation is scheduled to take place between May and July this year. According to the governor of the Agadez region, Nigerian authorities are seeking to avoid what he described as a humanitarian disaster. Niamey reports an unprecedented wave of sub-Saharan African migrants arriving on its territory after being expelled from Algeria and Libya. At the end of April, more than 1,000 undocumented migrants were expelled by Algeria into the desert, marking the first time such a large number had been expelled at once. These migrants typically make their way to the Nigerian border, which is often their departure point for journeys to Libya or Algeria, in hopes of eventually reaching Europe. In the first quarter of 2025 alone, Niger recorded the arrival of 6,000 migrants expelled from Algeria and Libya, according to official figures. Migrant reception centers in Agadez are now overcrowded, and conditions for those housed there are increasingly difficult.
Francis Boniface with that report.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Our guest interview segment takes us back to Nigeria, specifically in Maiduguri, the Borno state capital, and several local government areas, where residents are in panic mode over the resurgence of violent extremism in the region. Fighters from the Boko Haram terrorist organization and its offshoot ISWAP have been blamed for the recent attacks targeting farming and fishing communities. In the last 2 weeks, nearly 100 people, including farmers and fishermen in the Lake Chad Basin, were killed by insurgents. State Governor Professor Babagana Umaru Zulum, who is an assessment tour to affected localities, has appealed to federal government to deploy decisive strategies to tackle the rising insecurity. Our guest this afternoon is Professor Ibrahim Umaru, an international relations expert who began explaining some of the factors leading to a recent insurgence in the area.
There are very many factors. You see, when the federal government wanted to fight these bandits in northwestern Nigeria, the issues of insurgency have subsided in Maiduguri, and therefore they redeploy the command and control as well as the manpower on the ground with some weapons to gray zone in the southwestern part of the country, leaving the few troops on ground without adequate close air support or platoon cover. That is one aspect. Second, they were warned that there is a real-time intelligence that the insurgents in the northwestern Nigeria and in some parts of Africa are assembling in the ungovernable space in Borno. There was an intelligence and it was sheer. So before they engage in that action, they strike. And then tap, and the most important of it was, most of these insurgents are surrendering. And because they are surrendering, the other insurgents who don't want to surrender see it as a way of sabotage. They don't want their fellow insurgents to surrender. And for them to sabotage those that are surrendering, the best way is for them to attack military formations and formalities so that nobody will trust the reason why they are surrounded.
So does that mean that Professor Babagana Zulum's initiative, the 3 R's, that is reconstruction, rehabilitation, and resettlement program, was a success?
It's a success. And as I'm talking to you, more than 70% of the displaced communities are resettled back in your original furnaces and arbors. So the resurgence is a way of Tawachi. It's a way of subversing the efforts made by government in resettling these people back, because the moment you attack military formation, you are sending a panic signal to newly resettled communities by way of discouraging these people not to go back to the post-conflict reconstruction project. And that is the essence of the resurgence of the inside.
And is that what the Borno State residents feel at the moment?
And that is what we feel, generally. And that's why you see the children are also calm. It's a momentum. And the Nigerian military is now at the top of the situation. God willing, the Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, was once the theater commander in Maiduguri. They will come with operational model. I'm telling you, Nigeria is the most powerful military in Africa. It's not that we love the technicalities and the strategies. We have competent military officers at the tactical, operational, and strategic level. If the French, the Americans, the Germans, and British are serious, let them withdraw their so-called advisors. Let them lead our armed forces. Let them just support us with the necessary grip. Let me tell you something. When Nigeria applied for the supply of Super Tucano with our money, it took the Americans 5 years before they cleared to supply us with the Super Tucano. Which type of relationship is that? You are fighting a war, you are looking for a platform in order to contain that, and you are delaying the delivery of this platform until when?
Well, they said
everything is
the excuse they gave was that the reason they gave actually was that the Nigerian armed forces was accused on many grounds of human rights.
Accused the insurgents of human rights abuses. So when a Boko Haram or an insurgent killed the Nigerian military, it's made a human rights violation. It's only when the Nigerian military killed Boko Haram that will be the essence of a human rights violation. That's what I am talking about. Let them be careful about that bundle. The Americans, are they immune from human rights violation? What was their action in Afghanistan? What was their action in Iraq? They are the most brutal, the most arrogant, that even refused to sign the international humanitarian law. They were not even members of International Criminal Court, simply because of the arrogance and brutal nature of their armed forces. When a soldier is in the bush fighting, the issues of human rights ceases in a theater of war. But the Nigerians are so careful. The way the Nigerian military handled this counter-insurgency operation, if it were Americans, they could have bombed half of Maiduguri. We have competent military officers at the strategic, operational, and the tactical level. Let them allow them to do their job. If they wanted to assist us, let them support us with night vision Google. Let them support us with modern platform that will help track, interdict, and intercept communication. Let them support us with satellite intelligence that will enable our armed forces to precisely strike on the positions of these organizations.
Professor Ibrahim Umaru is an international relations expert talking to Abdullah Hassan, who is currently in Maiduguri. We begin this sport news with heartbreaking news from Senegalese football, because the local game is mourning following the sudden passing of Fadjouf Ndiaye, captain of US Wakam, who died on Saturday, May 17, after collapsing on the pitch during the top flight league match. The tragedy struck at the Parcelles Assainies Municipal Stadium during the Senegalese League One fixture between US Wakam and Oslo FA. Late in the first half, Ndiaye, aged just 30, fell to the ground after a heavy collision inside the penalty area. Emergency medics rushed to the scene and made desperate efforts to revive him. He was quickly transported to the hospital, but sadly, the beloved defender was declared dead en route to the hospital. And history was made under the Cairo lights last night, and South Africa football fans have every reason to celebrate. For the very first time, South Africa are the champions of the CAF Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations. It was a tense and tightly fought final at the June 30th stadium, where South Africa edged Morocco 1-0 thanks to a thunderous second-half strike from Gumolo Kekana. South Africa now joins the list of rising youth powerhouse on the continent following Senegal's win in 2023 in what's becoming an exciting new era for African football. Well, we have come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Faliluso and Umu Danyogo for these technical assistance. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram at WDR News. On Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio English service. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is our health program, Well Body with Imo Edit. I am Sankule Janko. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Me FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in